Good evening and welcome to the show. Now, most controversial movie of the week, David Cronenberg's Crash, which is adapted from the novel written by J.G. Ballard in 1973. The story was trouble back then, and it's still trouble now. The major problem seems to have to do with whether or not you're going to take this thing literally. I mean, do lots of people really take sexual pleasure from car crashes? Or is this just one man's depraved fantasy being imposed on an innocent public? The thing is that we tend to demand a moral message from movies. We want them to reveal universal truths, and we want this especially when movies are about sex. But Crash is simply not going to yield that sort of thing up so easily. This is the noisiest place I've ever had to do a stand-up. Now, most often, movie directors, or painters or writers, will throw your outrage right back at you, saying it's not up to them to defend their artistic vision. But David Cronenberg is different in this respect. He's already given over 100 interviews in Canada alone for Crash. We were interview 101, but we hope we can still offer up some fresh insights. What's this movie about?
This movie, well, it's about sex and car crashes. Everybody knows that. And of course, sneakily, it's really not about that at all. It's about a lot of other stuff that's very, kind of subtle and metaphorical, and it goes over the head of some people, but not as many as I thought. It's about, I think of it as a kind of an existentialist romance. It's really about how we must invent and constantly reinvent ourselves, and that includes sexuality, love, emotions, social contact. All of those things are constantly being reinvented. So I have a group of people in this film who go quite far in reinventing all of those things.
The car crash is a fertilizing rather than a destructive event. A liberation of sexual energy, mediating the sexuality of those who have died with an intensity that's impossible in any other form.
What do you think has upset people the most about this film?
Well, oddly enough, I mean, people talk about the sex, but I've seen a lot of movies that I thought were much more explicit sexually that just didn't cause a stir. And people think it's violent, but actually it's not a violent movie at all. There are no guns, there are no knives, nobody gets shot or stabbed or kicked in the head, and most standard action movies have lots of that. So I don't really think it's really violent. I think what it is, it's a formal problem. It's like there's structural formal things. It looks like a real movie, but it doesn't act like a real movie. The characters,
what do you mean by that?
Well, it doesn't fit the norms that people have come to accept. And ironically enough, the movie is about overturning norms, so it's kind of makes sense that it should do this. But it looked, it starts like Fatal Attraction. Have an attractive young couple, upper scale, and they're having some marital problems. And I think people think that they know what should happen after that. But in fact, it doesn't happen like that at all. And even sexually, I think it's formal. I mean, people are upset about the positions of people when they're having sex, and just they're behind each other. That disturbs them, So
you mean they're having intercourse from behind?
Yeah.
Well, you did that in The Fly.
Well, I
with Gina Davis.
I think people do it all the time, So it's kind of strange that they should be upset about this, and they don't know how to interpret it. Is it always anal sex, or is it vaginal sex from behind, and why is that? And I can go on about how I first of all, cinematically, it's kind of nice to see both faces facing you, so that's one reason I did it. And then it's also nice when you have sort of two people who are having sex, but it looks like they're looking at a third person, or they're both watching something in the distance as they're having sex, and that does play very well in the movie too, in terms of where the characters are. But it's almost, I think it's all structural. It's really strange. People's expectations and what the forms of things suggest should happen are not happening, and so I find that quite interesting. And people do come out of the movie not knowing why they're upset, or not knowing why they are obsessed. They don't know what they feel, and they don't know what to think.
In terms of the form, I wonder if you're referring to some people who claim to be bored by the film.
Yeah.
Some people say, in the middle of it, or perhaps from the middle on, nothing happens. There are no speed bumps on this speedway.
Yeah.
I get the impression sometimes that people just don't want to admit that they're aroused, or don't know what to do when they're confronted by a new stimulus.
Yes.
So they say, I'm bored.
Yeah.
They shrink back into the shell.
Yeah, I think it's true. I mean, and in a weird way, that also is kind of a formal problem, because, I mean, the movie starts with 3 sex scenes. So you often, by the 3rd sex scene, people can't believe that they're seeing another sex scene. And they also are used to completely turning off during sex scenes in a movie. I mean, being mildly connected, but really sort of waiting for the movie to get going again. And in this movie, the sex scenes are the movie going again. You have to watch it, you have to listen, and that's where everything's revealed. So I think they aren't really being bored, but I think it's almost as though they feel that boredom is the appropriate response. Are
you aroused by that sound, David?
Well, you know, if it were a nicer motor, I might be. But at the moment, I'm just bored. Absolutely bored by that sound.
What is this business, though, about the thrill of a car crash, the sexual thrill of a car crash? First of all, is there or is there not a psychological syndrome? I mean, do real people really get turned on?
Apparently, somebody did some research. I think it's called paraphilia. It was certainly something I had never heard of until just last week. And at the Clark, they say, oh yeah, we treat at least 1 or 2 people a week for this.
I think it's called symphorophilia.
Well, apparently they connect the two. They're like these 2 names. Competing syndromes, you know, they're struggling mano a mano for the title here. But apparently there are people who have a recognized problem, which is that car crashes are erotic for them, and that they in fact they can't get aroused unless there's something like that in the offing, and that of course is the real problem. If that's the only way you can get off, that could be quite dangerous. And but of course the movie works really more on a metaphorical level. I mean, you can make a case, sex and death. I mean, sex and danger, they do go together like love and marriage.
Mm-hmm.
Is there something here that interests you?
This interests me. I'd like to see if I can fit into a car designed for a normal body. Could you help me into it, please?
Yeah, sure.
Are these safe cars?
Yes, of course, they're very safe.
But it's more complicated than that. People are very upset by this film. Some people are very upset.
Yes.
I mean,
but the fact that
the British reviewer for the Evening Standard, for example, said beyond the bounds of depravity.
Yes, what a wonderful place to be.
If only.
Well, you see, if you look at that, you see, he's really trying to say that it's so depraved, he doesn't even know what to make of it. But I look at beyond the bounds of depravity is exactly where my characters have gone. I mean, they are beyond the judgments that would say something is depraved or not depraved. I think, in a way, he's more right than he knew. One critic said to me, the most disturbing thing about your film is the lack of a moral stance in the film. And I said, but you know, that is the subject of the film. If I impose some kind of comfy moral stance, disapproving of everything that's going on in the film, I've really subverted what the whole film is about. So in a way, I mean, it's maybe not sex and car crashes exactly that's disturbing people. There are a lot of things that are, there are a lot of undercurrents that are very uncomfortable for people to consider. And yet, these same people will admit, and I mean, I don't mean to be boring about it, but people do slow down for car crashes. We've all had that experience.
Right. But that's watching car crashes. That's different. We've all felt that surge in the chest as we go by.
Yes, but what is it?
Afraid to see the blood, but also excited.
Yes.
But that's different from then wanting to jump our partner.
Well, I wonder how many people do jump their partners after that, you know. But I mean, it's also I mean, it's just a biological fact that if members of your species are dying, you will have a built-in programmed response to want to reproduce those. So that's the sort of animal sex death thing. I mean, they're very connected, and there is an erotic response to danger and sexual and death being all around you, and so in a car crash, no less.
Perhaps people have some problems with the fact that the characters in the film are kind of zombies. You know, they go through this thing in an erotic trance.
Yes.
And they don't.
They're
not really recognizable often as human beings, like you or me. You know, I'd love to find a new kick.
Yeah.
And if car crashes are it, if that's the big new thing, you know, I'll give it a try.
Yeah.
But I don't recognize these people as having real lives, and that upsets people. Then they say, "You're exploiting." My husband had a car crash. He's a quadriplegic. It's not erotic.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know?
Somebody called the characters narcotized. I really like that. They're kind of narcotized. But once again, I mean, some people talk about Ballard's book as being sci-fi, when you read it, it isn't. But I think what they're sensing is exactly this I think it's the psychology of the characters that is the sci-fi element. I mean, I think Ballard was anticipating a kind of narcotized, disconnected, affectless psychology of the future, which would become the standard psychology of Western society. And he then transported that into a present story. And I was very conscious of doing that in the film, and I have my actors speak in a very sort of hypnotized kind of way. And that whole dreamlike quality, I mean, in a way you have to see the movie as a dream, you know. It's not meant to be received on the documentary level of the kind of reality that you're talking about.
Anyone could have walked in.
Did you come?
No.
J.G. Ballard wrote that book in 1973, yes?
Yes.
He wrote Crash in 73. But he was inspired by certain events that occurred in 1969, about which he wrote in another book, the second volume of his autobiography called The Kindness of Women.
Yes.
And in that, I have some of it here, and I'd like to read you some of it,
Sure.
because he took a lot of trouble to tell us about the backstory of the characters, who in real life, real events in London, England,
Yes.
had accidents in cars and were turned on by them.
Yes, they
He
hunted each other. I
They
remember
hunted each
that.
other
I
down
read
the
that.
streets.
Yes, yes. A woman and a man. I think he was a RAF flyer, and he had been in the war. And,
Former friend who had been interned in Japanese
Yeah.
internment camps in the Second World War.
Yeah.
And the woman who had been a junkie in Manhattan
Yes.
for a long time, who, like so many others at the end of the 60s, that 10-year pharmaceutical trial, thought of the media landscape as a life support system, force-feeding a diet of violence and sensation into her numbed brain.
Right.
He certainly felt that there was this real thing, and he
Yeah.
described after a near-death
Yes.
car crash that they
Yes.
have
Yeah.
together.
Yes.
And he's very explicit about it.
Yes.
It's,
I think that, having said all that we've said, that I think, you know, there absolutely is a case to be made for when the body is jarred and hit. And I mean, I've just fallen off a motorcycle just a couple of days ago, you know, on a dirt bike, and landed on my back, and it really hurt, and I thought, okay, let's see how sexy this gets, you know. And by the evening, I was totally horny, I have to say. I mean, it really works. It's not at the moment. It's not when you're in the hospital. But it's the shaking up of your life. You know, you have, I mean, in Crash, the epiphany that the Ballard character has comes when he's driving down a road, a lot of nice, narrow lanes of traffic, everybody running nicely together. It's all kind of structured and safe. And then suddenly, he cuts across all of those, cuts across the lanes of traffic. His car is torn apart, his body's torn apart, his life is torn apart. He has to reassemble all of that. And there is this incredible unleashing of energy that has been kind of controlled and contained. And part of it is the danger. It's the threat that you will not exist forever, and you are mortal. And so if you're going to experience anything, now's the time.
But that's the line, though, isn't it? It's the line between enjoying a shake-up, you know, and then having to live 24 hours a day in a metaphor,
Yes.
which is like a wheelchair.
Very difficult to do. Very difficult to do.
Not quite so easy.
Yes.
And Ballard himself asks, was my accident, in which I was lucky not to be killed, or otherwise, an attempt to die in an erotic death pact?
Yeah.
Well, that's a writer writing, like you
Yes,
say,
he
20
is.
year after the
Yeah,
fact.
yeah.
But you'll forgive me if I say that. I don't blame people who, you know, want to scream at you and say you're mad. I mean,
Yes.
you're cruel.
Yes.
To make this thing and to make
Yes.
us consider this. Why do we have to consider these dark sides? And I understand why they do that.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, I think that's all any artist has to offer, is those antennae that are sensitive to things that other people are either not sensitive to or who've tuned out deliberately. I mean, really, to show us the things about human nature, every strange, amazing facet, that's what we've got to offer. I mean, that's all we've got to offer as far as I'm concerned.
James.
What exactly is your project, Fawn? book of car crashes. Medical study. Sensational documentary. Global traffic.
It's something we are all intimately involved in. The reshaping of the human body by modern technology.
Do you mean because you're forcing people to consider that their sex lives might be boring?
I'm telling them that their sex life is a human construct, that it's an invention, that it's not an absolute, that it's not something that has always been the same and will continue to be the same. I'm saying that sex is up for grabs, you know? I'm saying that...
What do you mean by that?
Well, I'm saying that sex, you don't have to have sex to make babies anymore. So what is sex? I mean, we could get rid of it. We could say, sex has caused a lot of trouble over the years. We don't need it now to make babies. Let's get rid of it. Let's ban it. Let's just decide as a group of people, we won't have this anymore. But of course it won't go away. It's completely inbuilt to our nervous systems, and until we change that, it's going to be there. So it's this huge force that actually needs to be reinvented in terms of its meaning, its structure. Sex can be what? A performance art, it could be weaponry, it can be a commodity to be bought and sold. I mean, it has been all of these things forever, but now it's even more obvious that it's a constructed thing. It's not like a biological imperative. And so I think that makes people nervous. It's the old Jean-Paul Sartre conundrum, you know, man is condemned to be free, that there's a huge, having total freedom is an immense, terrifying responsibility. You'd rather be told by God what to do, how to act, what not to do, end of story. You just do that and you're okay. And when you realize that you are the one making the rules, it's really quite terrifying, and I think that also is what's scary to people.
One can identify a number of running themes in your films. Perhaps most prominent is a fascination with disease, decay, deterioration, all towards entropy. It all unravels towards the end. Yet you claim your endings are often happy.
Yeah.
How
I
do
think
you
Crash
match
is
the two?
definitely a happy ending. I think Crash has a happy ending.
You said that about Dead Ringers, you said
Yeah.
that about other films of yours,
Yeah.
Videodrome, I believe.
Yeah.
Well, how do you, I mean, what people see is disease, death, destruction, dismay, and so
Yes.
on. You see happy endings.
Yes. Well, it's a philosophical endeavor for me. I mean, and once again, it's sort of the card-carrying existentialist philosophical endeavor, which is to say that we do die. Now, if you do feel that that is the end of your life and that there is no afterlife where you'll be on a fluffy cloud and sort of look the same way you do now, if you don't believe that, then death is the end. And then, since all meaning that we take in our life is referred constantly to the future, you come up against the brick wall of death. That is where the theater of the absurd came from, the idea that going back from that, your whole life is absurd. There is no meaning. And it doesn't matter whether you do anything or not. You're still going to die, and that's the end of it. So in trying to grapple with that, which I think is one of the primary philosophical grapples that you must do, and that's what all religion is based on, I believe, then what I'm saying is, I'm looking at this as I'm saying hope. If there is to be hope, if there is to be a happy ending, let's say, or a positive ending, it must be based in what I see to be reality, the real hard truth of human existence. Anything else that's just illusionary, a delusion, it won't be real hope. It's just an avoidance of coming to grips with the real thing. So I'm saying in our lives, there is violence, there is death, there is nastiness, there is scariness. Out of all of that, if we want hope, we have to incorporate those things into our version of hope. We can't just sidestep them.
Finally, there's an old story about Roman Polanski. This story goes some way to explain why he's so weird. Mm-hmm. There was a particular sound he was trying to get at the end of Macbeth, after Macbeth is decapitated and his head bounces down the steps. He spent 2 weeks trying to get the right sound, driving his sound engineer batty.
Yeah.
Finally he said, look, you don't understand. When I was a kid in Poland and the Nazis dragged the old people out by the feet, I heard the sound of their heads banging
Bouncing
on the
down the
stairs
steps. Yeah.
as they were dragged out of their homes. I want that sound.
Yes.
Now that goes a long way to explaining who Roman Polanski is
Yes.
and what kind of filmmaker. Where do we begin with you?
Well, I certainly drove my sound engineers crazy with the sound of the crashes and the sound of I mean, sex with scars, you know? I mean, how do you convey that cinematically? Really, I think any good director is obsessive about all of those aspects of film. And there are personal, once again, you bring your whole life to making a film as well. That's what's so fascinating about it. It's not a narrow part of your life. It's every experience you've ever had should go into your movie making. And I think that it's maybe there is not such a neat little story to illustrate where I come from. It's not as spectacular and as dramatic and extreme a place as Polanski came from. And you know what, I'm thankful. I mean, I don't feel that one needs to have that kind of life in order to make films that can be difficult and extreme and profound. But it's all in there. I'm just not going to be the one to distill it out for you.
Thank you very much indeed.
Okay, this has been fun.
One of the pleasures of this intensely documented century we live in is the way we can instantly sample yesteryear for that quick nostalgia hit. Pop culture does this so frequently that we sometimes find ourselves happily reliving memories of moments that actually occurred before we were born. Now, Douglas Copeland calls this historical slumming, and it's an experience we at Big Life have been getting from Rick Prelinger's series Our Secret Century, the third installment of which we present now. Our media archaeologist draws this week from his massive collection of industrial and educational films to look at America's post-war suburban